Hello, great to see you, Ciarán. It's been a little while since our last podcast. How are you doing?
Greg, I'm doing very well. You might notice that there's an object behind me in the sky that you don't normally see in Ireland.
There's a
This
bright
is
light behind you. What is happening?
yeah, this is the sunniest and warmest day of the year so
Uh,
far.
yes, that's right. Pretty early days. That's right.
But for 10 dry days, and as you know, as a visitor to Ireland, that's pretty much of a record.
That's a solid run. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm even rocking my Albany Rebels football jersey
Outstanding. That looks sharp.
today.
Very
Yeah.
nice. Yes. Excellent. Well, thank you for making the time today to catch up and give us an update on some of the latest. There's been a lot going on, and it's great that we get this chance to check in and get some analysis and updates. We'll start off with elections, right? A couple weeks ago, history was made yet again, at this time in local elections. It looks like it was a positive, progressive, constructive campaign with a record number of candidates that led to the party really making historic gains in that space. Can you describe a little bit the scale of that victory and what that victory tells us about the growing support for unity?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's fun. We have to find a new word to describe our elections past. Historic. And to put it into context, like, people will remember the start of the conflict in 1969, and that was over the denial of votes in local government elections, and
Yep.
particularly gerrymandering in Derry, where it wasn't that you had to be a homeowner,
Yeah.
business owners could get more than one vote, and there was mass discrimination against the Catholic and Irish nationalist and Irish community living in the north of Ireland. So fast forward from that, we end up having an election 2 weeks ago, and Sinn Féin emerged the largest party. So we consolidated our position at 31%, almost 8% above our nearest rivals in the DUP. So it was a huge election and a huge rise in support for Sinn Féin. How that translated, there was a record-breaking number of seats we secured. No party has ever achieved a total. It was 144 seats, and that's across all of the 6 counties. There's probably one or two council areas, I think maybe just one, which is no Sinn Féin representative on. But we have Sinn Féin councillors elected in places which would have been historically seen as unionist areas.
Yeah.
And we have Sinn Féin actually having an overall majority in a council, which is unseen. So all of that has been, the rise of the party has been fantastic. As I say, increased representation, increased vote share. But what also set this one as a historic first was that for the first time ever, the pro-Irish unity parties outpolled the pro-partition parties.
Yeah.
The unity parties and candidates polled 43.5%. The pro-division, pro-partition, pro-union with Britain parties polled just over 39%.
Incredible.
So
Yeah.
there's almost a 4% split there, and then it was 17.5% went to parties and candidates who declared no
Other.
position. They were the others,
Yeah.
no preference in it. So bring it back. It might have sounded like I was going back to 1969 talking about local government elections. This state in the north of Ireland was gerrymandered in 1922 on
Yeah.
the basis of having a permanent majority, unionist majority. Not only is the permanent unionist majority is gone, but now the people who want to see Irish unity are now gaining a lead in this election. First time ever that's been done.
Yeah.
So in the Good Friday Agreement, Greg, as we've spoke about it numerous times, provides for Irish unity referendums. So if
Yep.
the people support Irish unity, there should be a vote. The
That's right.
threshold for that has now been met, in my opinion, and any objective observer
Would
So
say
we,
the same. Yeah.
yeah, so we need to move ahead. We now need to plan for the future. We now need to look at Irish unity. We now need to plan for those referendums. And we need an Irish government to step up to the mark and
Yeah.
actually begin to plan, to prepare and advocate for Irish unity. Because make no mistake about it, we could win a referendum
That's
on
right.
those numbers. It's not
The
secured. It's not a given.
and
But
you
the
know
potentials are.
the important piece would be it's really time to start planning so that there's not a question mark hanging over looking at the Brexit example of without having a plan in place to trigger a big vote on a major decision about the future of a nation. There needs to be a plan in place, and that planning needs to begin yesterday, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You need to know more. You need to know what you're voting for, as well as what maybe people will always be motivated by what they're voting against. And people don't
Yeah.
like partition and they don't like division, but they also It's also crucial that people know the type of new Ireland that is possible, one that breaks from the past, one that becomes a home for all, one that is prosperous and equal. So for me, that's a very exciting project as an Irish Republican to articulate that. But this is doable. This is winnable. We need, as I say, we need an Irish government to step up to the mark and to plan and prepare. And for the British government to say, yes, there will be a unity referendum. That threshold has been crossed. Let's set a date and let's start planning.
Working towards it. You know, the ways in which you're describing a constructive future, a future with clarity, a progressive future, an inclusive future, that really was a central element of Sinn Féin's campaign all over. Is there any insight in this? Might be too inside baseball or too in the weeds, but were there any insights into the ways in which this record-breaking result was achieved? Meaning, were we receiving transfer votes from a new area? Were there new voters involved? Or any indication of what's happened there?
Well, it's very clear that the rise of Sinn Féin has pulled out a new vote. So some people have talked about it being an alignment within nationalism. The SDLP vote, who would be if you like, the Nationalist Party, the rival the Irish Republican Party, their vote fell by about 3%.
Yeah.
Ours went up by almost 8%. So there's a new vote coming.
The math isn't there,
And we know anecdotally, and we know just looking at some of the numbers, that there's people who might have been from a unionist background who are now open to voting for Sinn Féin. We know that there's transfers coming from across the board to Sinn Féin. So I wouldn't overegg it, but there's definitely a shift going on there. While there's part of it is a new generation coming in.
Yeah.
But there's also people from a unionist community are beginning to look from that sort of background. They're beginning to look to the future, and they like what Sinn Féin stands for an inclusive, forward-looking, positive-looking, progressive view for our future and our present, because we want the institutions up and running. We want government working. We want the Good Friday Agreement delivering.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's fascinating and extraordinarily exciting time, and it feels really great to have some insight into all of that. And we can maybe take a look at polling in the South right now. The latest poll show Sinn Féin is the largest party, coming in at 35%. What do you think is happening in that context, and what does that mean for the future?
Yeah. So again, in January 2020, Sinn Féin recorded their highest ever vote in the 26 counties when we just got over 24%.
Yeah. And
people were thinking that's a one-off. What has actually happened over the past 2.5, 3 years has been there's more. That's not only have we consolidated, but more people are coming to our vision of a new and united Ireland, but also possibilities of dealing with issues at the present. There's a huge housing crisis. I live in the 26 counties. I live outside Dublin. There's a huge housing crisis going on here. And it didn't come about through a natural disaster. It came about by the failure of policies by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, who have controlled both government and opposition in this state since it was formed. And people are now looking for an alternative, whether it's to do with housing, whether it's to do with healthcare, whether it's to do with general inequality. They just want the change, and they're looking at Sinn Féin and say, we can give these people a chance to prove themselves in government. And that's the move on. But yeah, you're right. For me, those figures were highly significant. We were just under 35%, so we're just over 34%. And the combined vote of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael came in at 35%, or just over 35%. So we're about probably about a 1% difference between us and the combined vote of those two parties who lead government at the minute.
Yeah.
So the potentials are for having Sinn Féin leading government in the north, Michelle O'Neill being the first minister, and the potential, and what our objective is to have a Sinn Féin led government in the south, with Mary Lou McDonald as the first Sinn Féin and the first woman to be Taoiseach.
That's
hugely exciting.
It is extraordinary.
Having those two on the same side of the table.
Yes.
It would be formidable for anybody.
Yes. And I know it can get a little complicated, the timeline. Can we just briefly look at what are we looking at with elections? And there's many elections, many different layers of that, right?
Yeah, so as you know, Irish republicanism was based on the very democratic value of the equality between people and the democratic rights of everybody, and has been that's been a central basis of our ideology for years. The downside of that, we live in two jurisdictions and we fight elections in two jurisdictions, so we have a lot of elections. So we had an assembly election last May. We had the local government elections in the north 2 weeks ago. The next set of elections, which we know are planned, will be, we have European and local council elections in the 26 counties in June of next year.
Okay.
It looks like the likelihood is we could have a Westminster election in May, if not sooner.
Oh,
because that can be called by May of next year, which is to elect MPs in the north of Ireland.
mm-hmm.
And somewhere in the middle of that, this government could fall
Yeah.
at any time because of the absolute aims they're making of issues in people's lives. And I suppose where people are putting smart money on would be, there could be a possible election in the fall of this year,
Mm-hmm.
most likely in the fall of next year for a general election in the 26 counties. So the good news is we're going to test our mandate on at least 3 occasions,
In the next
north
year,
and south, in the next year, which also puts a huge challenge to the party and our resources, and with the support of people in the US. They can help with the elections in the north of Ireland.
Yeah, that's, we just recently hosted Pat Sheehan from West Belfast in New England for a tour of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, meeting with community leaders, political leaders, labor leaders. Can you describe that tour was excellent to meet with folks who have a ton of questions and who are ready to support. Describe a little bit how these trips are helpful and what does it mean when someone comes out to hear a speaker or when they are able to make a contribution on the website? Why is that important to the party and into plans?
Well, it's important. It works on a number of different levels and a number of different dimensions. So we had Pat Sheehan out, and Pat's a former hunger striker who was in hunger strike for 55 days in 1981. He was the longest serving hunger striker when the hunger strike was called off. And so he's part of that is the link to the past.
Yeah.
But Pat also talks about the future. Pat is still an elected representative, and he's very much focused on the next 20 years about where we can and what we can do. So having those people out, it allows us to engage with, if you like, the base of support. So Pat spoke in New Bedford. He was in Hartford, Connecticut. He was unveiled an absolutely incredible monument to hunger strikers in Rhode Island, and then you accompanied him when he was in Boston.
Yeah.
So it lets us talk to the base, lets us inform them, lets us let them know about what the potential is. And more importantly, or just as important, it lets us to hear back what people's concerns and questions are.
Yeah.
So we can fill in those gaps and also hopefully encourage them to become engaged in promoting Irish unity. And it's not just about the US. In the last 2 weeks, we've also had Conor Murphy in Ottawa for a formal reception in the Canadian Parliament to mark the Good Friday Agreement, and he met with representatives of all of the political parties there. And again, that's about having a political engagement, about the importance of the Good Friday Agreement and the importance of supporters in those institutions, maintaining their engagement, but also thinking about the future.
Yeah.
At this very minute, John Finucane is in Montreal.
That's right. Yeah.
And he was speaking he met with some of the political representatives there, but he was speaking at an event yesterday, which is a very powerful event. It was called the March to the Black Rock, and it's a monument in Montreal to 6,000 Irish people who died, who made their way to Montreal and died at the time of the famine in Gorcher Moor.
Yeah.
And they died of illness in Montreal, and their kids were raised and brought up in Montreal and Quebec. And we are, Greg, never stopping. So one trip ends, one trip's the middle of it, and we're looking at the next one. So hopefully we will be traveling to Washington to brief members of the administration and members of Congress and others on political developments. We will hopefully have Michelle O'Neill, the First Minister-elect, traveling with us.
Yeah.
And that trip will go June 6th, 7th, and 8th. So it's a bit of a whirlwind, but people in Washington need to hear about what the elections meant, what needs to be done to get the institutions up and running. They need to plan for the future, and their role in that.
And I think that's really key. Thanks for spelling that out. The donations that people are able to contribute make those trips possible in many ways. They also support a whole lot of efforts of the party. And in those meetings, it is, as you described, a two-way street. It's conversational. There's a way to get an update. There's a way to inform. It is vital that we had an incredible turnout everywhere we went, and more than 115 people in Providence there for the unveiling of the memorial day. We were saying everywhere we went, there were dozens and dozens of folks coming to meet and hear and talk. So as you see events pop up on your calendar, it is really important that you show up, you bring some folks who are curious, and that those contributions keep coming in to make these trips possible so that we can continue to update folks not only on the Hill in Washington, but all over the country, and that we can continue to hear what's important to all the supporters. Thank you, Ciarán, for spelling that out. I think we're wrapping it up here. Anything else you want to close with before we wrap it up today?
Well, no, and we need to stay in touch, and hopefully we'll have Michelle on. I'd like to thank all the people, by the way, not
Absolutely.
just who support Friends of Sinn Féin allows the trips to happen, but the people who in New Bedford, the Chris Donnellys, the
Yes.
McCannons, and all the squad in Rhode Island who secured that, the people in Hartford, Richie Lawler and
Yes.
Eamon Burke, and all of those, as well as our people in Kevin Fagan in Boston who
Yeah.
helped that, and Mike Day who supported him, and Steve Tolman.
Steve
and
Tolman
Shannon
there,
Eden,
exactly right. Yeah.
and an incredible Shannon Eden who came down. So all of that, I mean, I'm very conscious that all of these are only made possible not only by financial support but activism.
Exactly
people
right.
organizing events,
Yep.
inviting us to those, and allowing us to have that platform to talk about the huge potential, positive potential which we face in creating a new and united Ireland. That's as much of a buzz that you can have on a sunny day in Ireland.
That's right. And it is an extraordinarily exciting time, historic time. We'll find another word next time, but we can say historic for now. This is an exciting time, and grateful for all the support and engagement. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today, and hopefully get back out in the sunshine, put a bunch of sunscreen on, and get back out there. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
All right, Greg. Thanks, everybody.